Howdy, I'm Lee Wilson, and this is TGO Wyoming, On the Move. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite podcasts. Now, I've already discussed the Dangerous History podcast done by Professor CJ over there at profcj.org, and that is a fantastic podcast, but I want to tell you guys about how I got to it. And that is through the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko. Now, I've been listening to the Survival Podcast for probably 6 months, 7 months, and it is an awesome podcast. It is run by a gentleman named Jack Spirko. Now, Jack has a lot of good information, and I agree with a lot of what he has to say. Now, there are times I disagree with him, but that's going to be, the same as with anything. You're not always going to agree with somebody 100%. But Jack provides an incredible service to his listeners, and he's made a full-time career out of the Survival Podcast and providing people with good information. And he does this in a number of ways. Currently, he has over 1,800 episodes. I think the episode I listened to this morning was episode 1887. And so there is a wealth of information there. I mean, he's got a lot of episodes. And they're always entertaining, they're always educational, and they're always fun. So one of the cool things that he does is that he has a guy named Alex Shrugged write basically the TSP Wiki, the year that was, is one of my favorite parts of the entire podcast. And if the episode's, let's say, 1887, he will go through events in the year 1887. He'll pick one and read it in the podcast, and then he'll put the rest of what Alex puts together on the TSP Wiki. And TSP is, shorthand for the Survival Podcast, which is a really useful resource and gives you some really cool little bits of history. So then he usually has a variety of different episodes, right? There's the Jack episodes where he picks the topic that he wants to discuss and discusses it. Sometimes he'll throw it out there for listeners to decide on the topics that will be discussed. He'll have basically a voting contest, a survey, where the listeners can vote on what they want to see on the podcast or want to hear on the podcast. And one of my favorite episodes is his Expert Counsel. Now, the Expert Counsel is awesome because Jack knows a lot, and he's well-educated, well-spoken, well-read, but he's also smart enough to know that if he brings in subject matter experts, SMEs, he can really provide even greater service to his listeners. So he has awesome people like Doc Bones and Nurse Amy from Doom and Bloom. That's doomandbloom.net. Really cool people. I really like their podcast too. He's got Gary Collins from the Primal Power Method, and I am a big fan of of primal eating and everything like that. So his episodes are fantastic. And usually what will happen is listeners will call in and have a question for somebody on the Expert Council, and then the Expert Council member will call in and answer that question. So you get some really cool feedback. So if there's something you want to know, you can ask the Expert Council, and they'll answer it for you. Another awesome guy is Stephen Harris. He handles ham radio, energy, battery banks, anything you want to know about solar power. There's Erica Strauss, who's one of my favorites. She does suburban homesteading and canning questions. Absolutely phenomenally educated woman. Really informative and fun to listen to. Tim Glantz is the guy that runs Old Grouch Military Surplus. Man, I've learned more about milsurp vehicles and trailers and stuff, basically any military surplus, from listening to his little bits and pieces of the podcast. And of course, my favorite guy of all of them, Brian Black from TSP Tactical. And Brian is such an awesome guy, and he probably doesn't remember, but way back in the day when Two Guys Outdoors was started and Clayton and I were just beginning the channel, Brian had started TSP Tactical. And we, being both Texans, had communicated back and forth quite a bit, and I got to really like Brian and appreciate his input and his thoughts and what he's done. And he has turned ITS into a totally awesome web page and a really good YouTube channel. So Brian, you're doing an awesome job if you happen to stumble across this video. I appreciate it, and maybe I'll chat with you again someday. But that's been like 7 years ago, so we're talking back 2009. So, but he does really informative, good stuff. So there's other cool things about the Survival Podcast, and Jack's really done a good job of turning it into a business. He's got his TSP gear shop where you can find some really cool equipment. He runs and supports the Granddaddys Gun Club, which is I'll have to do another episode on that because Granddaddys Gun Club is really something that I think it's very important for people to look into. You can always head over to the survivalpodcast.com and click on Granddaddys Gun Club. There's a link to it there and learn more about it. Very smart way of doing it. He's got the member support brigade, which is basically you can support the show by buying a yearly membership to the MSB, and then you get discounts. And that's really nifty. So if you enjoy this vlog and this YouTube channel, you might really enjoy what he's done with Survival Podcast and the MSB. He has had some really cool interviews on. He just interviewed the guy that runs readfomag.com, Forward Observer. I cannot remember his name. Samuel. Sorry about that. I'll link to it in the comments. And I've actually started listening to Samuel's podcast as well because it's really worthwhile. And of course, every week he fields the listeners' calls, and that's stuff that Jack answers. Question that Jack answers, not just for the Expert Counsel. And that's always really entertaining. He's got it set up really awesome where you can either call in on the phone or record off of your computer and send it in and ask your questions and get clarifications on previous episodes or bring up new topics, and that's really cool. And of course, he has the Amazon item of the day, which is nice because it's gear that he's actually used. It's very similar to the way I do it, where I'm not going to recommend something if I haven't used it. Well, he does the same thing and doesn't do that. He's also responsible for my interest in permaculture, which that'll be part of the urban homesteading series, is my ventures into permaculture. And if you haven't figured or if haven't seen what permaculture is, it's really an all-inclusive system of living, and it's pretty damn awesome. I'll have to explain it more as I get into it, and you guys can follow along on my permaculture adventures. So this episode's running really long, but the point is that there's a lot of learning to be done, right? And it's important to expand your horizons and learn as much as you can. And the Survival Podcast and what Jack has to say is an excellent resource. You may not always agree with what he has to say, and that's okay. But you should always listen, think critically, and that is something that he stresses greatly, is think critically. Really learn how to think, and you're going to be a lot better off. So hopefully you guys will check it out. I will link to everybody that I can in the comments down below, or in the description down below, so you guys should check that out, definitely. And Jack, if you happen to stumble across this video, I just want you to know that I really appreciate everything you do. I thoroughly enjoy the podcast. As soon as I have a little more income, I will definitely be joining the member support brigade, and I appreciate it because you're doing a great job. And for everybody that hasn't checked out TSP, give it a shot. You might like it, and you might learn something important. So if you guys have found this episode entertaining and or educational, please let me know in the comment box below. I like hearing from y'all. I am now here at a location where I have to do a job, so I'm going to hop to it. So, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more great videos. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.